Hello, everybody. Welcome to Art Workers. I just want to say a couple things before we start the episode in earnest. The first is, it's been a minute. It was difficult to sit down and edit this podcast for the last year almost because of, things going badly. I mean, you know what they are. And for context, I am not American. I am in America. It's a precarious time and a stressful time. And I was just like, the world is burning. How can I do this thing? Turns out the world is just going to keep burning. And you're just going to have to do the thing anyway. So here I am. And I just want to say thank you to Michael in particular for being patient, because I recorded this episode with him in May of last year. And to you for also tuning in again. So I'm going to try to get these back on a regular cadence and continue providing a platform for my artists and friends and interesting people in New York and the area to talk about their work. So here we are. And one last thing, you'll notice that the name has changed. It's no longer Art Workers, the Independent Artists Forum, which, as much as we all love words, that is maybe too many of them for a podcast name. The reason I chose that name actually is because there was another podcast that took the name I wanted. It was called Art Workers, which is what I intended to be the name of my podcast. They're gone now. They stopped recording. I win, so I'm claiming that name. Hello, welcome back to Art Workers with Carl Bindman. Our guest for today's episode is my friend, actor, playwright, dramaturg, Michael Landis. We talk about all those things in this conversation recorded May 21st, 2025. Welcome to what I just introduced as, in the intro, Art Workers, the Independent Artists Forum, which I'm really pleased that I'm now reliably saying the name of correctly, which was super not the case for the first few episodes. But this is episode 10, and I'm joined by my friend who has popped up in other episodes as somebody to talk about. And I'm going to say his name correctly too, Michael Landis.
That's exactly right. That's very impressive.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people mispronouncing your name. How does that make you feel?
I kind of go blank and my vision goes very red, and I wake up a few hours later and I don't know what has happened, but it's not a feeling. It's more a kind of spiritual overcoming experience.
And that happens every time somebody calls you, I'm going to say it, Michael Landis.
Like clockwork.
Well, it didn't this time.
It is. I'm just still acting normal.
Oh, you're masking it.
I go blank. I mean, later I will not remember any of this. You're now in the alternate Michael Landis field.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the perfect time to ask you the real hard-hitting podcast questions.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. What's your social insurance number?
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
It's a lot of numbers.
12.
I mean, I'm Canadian, so I don't know how long these are supposed to be. What I do know, actually, is that my good friend Michael Landis is a theater artist here in New York City. How do you actually introduce yourself to somebody when you're like, hi, what I do is this? Because you do a couple things.
My lineup in the bios I send out right now is playwright, dramaturg, actor. Although in my actual, no, that's probably right. I was gonna say maybe I would switch actor, dramaturg, but no, the ranking would go playwright, dramaturg, actor. I've played with things where I'm just I'm theater maker and those sorts of things, but really it's those three that I actually am spending my time doing.
So why do you not want to think of yourself or present yourself as a theater maker or a theater artist more vaguely?
I think that it's because I have wanted to focus on playwriting for a long time. And I, in my MFA program, I did not present myself as a playwright first and foremost. I presented myself as a dramaturg. And so in order to kind of position myself as someone doing the kind of work that I actually really do want to be doing, that's why I kind of like the specificity of it, even when I am really excited by a lot of other things and would happily jump into a lot of other roles when asked. I think I spent a lot of time working with other projects where I was coming in as wearing different hats. And I wanted to put that first as kind of like, I do want to be doing stories that I generate. I want that to be part of what I'm doing at least. And I love to help on other projects, and I love working with a lot of other people on what they're interested in too. But I still want that to be present at least. And I've seen it happen with a lot of people who position themselves as more generally, that you get pulled in a lot of directions by a lot of people because every project is going to need a bajillion people to work on it. So it becomes a little more difficult to prioritize that. And that's kind of what happened to me. So
Difficult to prioritize what?
Difficult to prioritize your own artistic voice, right. I guess.
So like if you are in the room, if you are thought of as, oh, well, Michael just does sort of all the stuff, then vague things fall on you rather than like, I want to work on this thing.
Yeah. Or you're not kind of, you wind up with a portfolio of stuff that you've worked on, that some of it, which can be amazing work. And a lot of the stuff that I was working with other people on, I'm incredibly proud of and very happy with what we did. But it's also not projects that my voice was first in. And I'm excited about doing both things. And so in order to do both things, where I'm supporting other people on things that they're doing and pushing forward other work with collaborators and also generating my own work, I felt that I wanted to put the generating first so that it didn't get lost in the mix kind of.
Yeah, because I mean, I knew you first as a dramaturg. Like we met on, was it Acts?
Yeah.
Wow. Which was only yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those things where it's like, that was one of the first projects I did when I finished conservatory, because I had a teacher who was like, who had graduated from the MFA at Columbia and was like, if you're looking for things to do, reach out to the directors there. And I did, because I couldn't work yet because I was waiting for my work permit to come through. So I was doing like scene study work with Ben Viertel, who ended up being tagged to direct this show called Acts by Stephen Bush. Second year show.
Yeah.
And you were in the room, and you were the dramaturg, and I had never worked with a dramaturg before. You were the first dramaturg that I worked with. I remember two moments. One where like you and Steven kind of had a conversation about like, because he was writing it as we were doing it, and was it that he was resistant to your notes or?
Oh yeah, there was friction on it because, I'd be interested to talk to Steven about it now because I love him and get along with him great. And I really, really like all his work.
We all did our reading on Monday.
We saw him, just the other day for a reading. So yeah, basically what happened was the interesting thing about the dramaturgy program at Columbia, there's many interesting things. One of the things about it is that pretty much every other program in that school, people are coming in with some work having already been done. Like you've written a play before, now you're in the playwriting program. You've directed before, now you're in the directing program.
Yeah, like you need your portfolio to get in.
Most dramaturgs, that was absolutely not the case, like including myself. Most of us were coming in with an awareness of what the field was like and what it could be like, but no actual experience in it. And the same is true for the vast majority of the other people in the program, so writers and directors and so on. So that's kind of what I think the not feeling out or feeling out for the first time what that role was like in the room for me and Steven, because it was Steven's first production at Columbia. It was my first full production, my technically second, but kind of my first full production of at Columbia.
It was mine.
Yeah. And so that was figuring out what feedback happens from everyone and how the dramaturg's feedback is the same or different was essentially, that was kind of the point where I had talked to Stephen previously about the play for a while when he was drafting it. And it was
for everybody, Acts by Stephen Bush is a play about the sort of commission that Pope John Paul the 11th? No. The Pope who was the Pope after the World War II Pope.
John 13, I think.
About this sort of like this group of Jesuit priests at the Vatican who were commissioned to like look into what the church knew about the Holocaust. Really fucking awesome play, I think. Super, super fun. Ben Viertel directed. Leon Schwendner and Ryan Gerberding played the other two guys. Just awesome. Because it was like a really historically rich play, I was like, we're going to do a lot of research into like what's going on, what were these characters actually doing, like the actual people that these characters were based off of, and like the time period, because it moves through 3 distinct time periods, and like what are the issues in the church. And that's all the sort of stuff that I would have done as an actor preparing the part. And like it was disorienting to come in and to be like, here is somebody who is doing the stuff that I associate with actor preparation, and it's like in service of the whole production, and it's not mine. Which I don't know if we had like a conflict over that, because it was immediately unambiguously helpful. But it was a sort of thing of like, so what is a dramaturg? What are they doing here? And that might be something that a lot of folks listening who are working at different levels have different experiences with. Because like my take or my understanding of what a dramaturg is like a really big it depends.
Yes, a 1,000,000%. The metaphor I use or think of whenever I'm starting a project as a dramaturg or just working on anything as a dramaturg is always the idea that your role is you're like water. It sounds very spiritual, which I do not mean at all. Honestly, it's really just a job, but you fill in the gaps. And when you work with a writer, for example, on Acts, Stephen read like 4 massive nonfiction histories of this period in like the summer before we did the show. We did the show in January or February. And so I came in, I was like, I don't really need to be doing the history stuff because I'm working with a writer who is thrilled about that and really, really excited about that process. Were I working with a writer who said, I was really excited about this particular thing about a period, but I'm not sure about the rest of the information, in that case, yeah, absolutely, I would hit the library. So that's one example of the way that I'm like, what does first the writer or director, when I'm working with the director first, what do they need? And then what does the show and production need to sort of lube everything up, basically.
And so in Acts, that for you was like kind of editing is what it seemed like. It was like on the rewrites.
It was a lot of Stephen's a writer who is enormously ambitious, and helping him and his writing process to take that ambition and these very, very lofty ideas and goals that he really wants to work in. It was about making sure that we're shaping that all together so that when we hit opening night, this is as close to what he had in his mind in the first place as possible. So that was definitely involved in the editing. There were a lot of projects at Columbia where it was involved in editing and things like that.
So Michael and I met through Columbia. I talked to a lot of people who went to Columbia. I am not a Columbia student. It's just that, like, against all odds and against the efforts of the institution, it would appear, it's like a good little artistic community up there, or at least it was. I think the situation has gotten just too fraught. I'm personally kind of stepping away, and I'm not alone in that. But like, yeah, like the way that they have it set up with the directors, and you do a lot of these scenes, brings in a lot of actors who meet the playwrights and like the other directors and dramaturg folk. It's like it's a really cool community. And so it's like, through doing the scenes with Ben and then the scene with Ben and then the show. There I met Miguel, who I was in his thesis, and you were the dramaturg on that. And then he also directed Stephen Bush's thesis, which was around the same time as Kata's. No, Kata's was the year before, because
few months difference.
Few months after Lunasa, right. And Catalina Beltran, great director also. Yeah, and it's just like this cool little like community of folks who all kind of go out into the world at the same time and then like move upward and then cast each other in the projects that they can. And I remember that this show that you did with Catalina, which was about Meg, the daughter of Thomas More.
Yes, Margaret Moore, later Margaret Roper, marries Will Roper. It's the best way to describe or think about it is it was kind of written by Paula Vogel as a companion piece to A Man for All Seasons that was focused on the role of women, and especially Meg Roper and the way that she is presented in that play versus what Paula Vogel kind of imagined in this kind of alternate history thing.
Yeah, although a weird thing about that play is that it makes the characters sort of like life after the play is done specifically worse and more misogynistic than like the life she actually experienced. The play is a lot about her literacy. It's like a big point of contention with like her husband and her mom especially. And then like in the play, the sort of epilogue, the Michael went off and learned how to ski. He died at 32, like that sort of thing. Not you, Michael, a different Michael. For her, it was like, and then she never wrote again or something. Whereas in real life, she was quite a respected and accomplished scholar.
I guess this goes to one of the differences in working with an existing text where I'm dramaturging with a director versus working with a playwright on something that's getting developed. So it's more that like, I don't know if I really think there are perfect plays. I know that there are plays that I would say, yeah, that's pretty much perfect. I really don't think you can change anything about that, but it's vanishingly few.
What's like one?
Midsummer. Midsummer is perfect.
By Ari Aster.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to Shakespeare because he's the writer that he's right behind you, of course, but also he's the writer that a lot of people praise as the kind of unending genius who everything he did was perfect. I think he wrote maybe like 2 plays that I was like, these are absolutely, you couldn't really change anything. I think it's probably Midsummer and Romeo and Juliet. But I think the thing that's rich about him and what I love about working on any revivals of anything that's been done before is that you go to it and you're like, wow, there's some really strange stuff in this play that's really naughty and difficult, naughty like tied up in knots, and requires some kind of thought to kind of transform into something that works as like an evening as an evening's experience. So Meg, that you're hitting on one of the many that we ran into in that play. And there's other things that happen in that play that I think Paula Vogel does more successfully in other plays, but is also really ambitious. And so it's really exciting when you look at it and you're like, wow, these characters transform in this incredible way. And then you get down to brass tacks and you're like, this is a real challenge to actually make this work. So that's something that I really love about getting to do these plays that have been done previously. Dancing at Luna's is another one that had some real challenges in it.
Yeah, well, we took a big fucking swing with that production, which I think unambiguously very successful. I think that was a really good show.
100%. I think that wound up coming off really great. I think that Lunasa, the challenge was the second half pacing. It's were I talking to Brian, Bri, as I like to call him, I would say that it's a 90-minute and it wound up in the 2-hour range. And that's one of those hard things as when you're going in with a director where you're like pacing it and understanding, okay, how do you make this experience feel like it's paced in one way when the text actually might be paced in a different way?
Yeah. I mean, that was part of the rehearsal performance process, working with Miguel Brigante, the director on that, like pace specifically. Like I remember even like a couple of days before opening, we were working on like the rhythm of walking into the entrance of it, where it's like it seems really extremely focused on small details, but like for the beginning of a play, and I know this is something that Miguel works on a lot, is like the beginning of the play needs to kind of like set the right expectation and the right tone, and like you need to go at the right moment to kind of sustain the rest of the work. And one of the challenges for me in that play, because I was all the guys, I was on stage a shit ton, had just a million bajillion lines and actions and etc. There was the one where I was playing Father Jack, who's like this older man who has malaria and is kind of like loosey-goosey in the head in terms of memory and where he is. Big Joe Biden energy. And like he's recalling this ritual that he did. The action is me walking kind of in a circle around the stage, because we have it set up with like a little platform in the middle that's like where the memory happens, and he's kind of on the periphery going around and around and around and around. And like the goal with that scene was to have it be revving upward constantly. And this was after I've been on stage for about 80 minutes continuously. It's so... I mean, I'm a big believer in like, physicality of acting being kind of like the most important thing, and like driving everything else, and like having that scene be then in the play was really helpful. And like, if I could get on the rhythm and drive in that circle up, and land at the end of it, I felt like, okay, the last like 20 minutes of the play will take care of themselves.
I think something that...
But also, actually, I'm going to cut you off, because after that, I go away and I need to hand off the energy to the other actors. And it's like, if I leave them with a fucking limp fish, they're going to be struggling to like pick that back up. And I don't want to do that. Okay, I have stopped cutting you off.
I think that one of the things that Miguel's style of direction has definitely taught me, and there's many things that are this isn't even a negative thing I'm going to say about it, but I'm also just going to say there's a bajillion things that are really brilliant about it and that I've learned from him. But one of the things that I love about it is that he really, the feeling and the knowledge that the theater is a sport, and the experience of performing the play is an athletic sport, is very present in the way that he works with pacing, energy, builds and falls. And the result is that, I think it's true of any play, but it's felt much more clearly in the ones that I've worked on with him, is that the play is a sport. And when you've seen it many times, you start to watch it that way, and you start to see like, okay, that was a point they won there, something they lost there, something they gained there, something that fell there. And then you start to understand how a show that can be incredibly successful one night and just feel electric is can be actually really flaccid another night. And I remember that because one of the shows I didn't work on with Miguel at school was Stephen Bush's thesis play, Scrubland. And that was a show where I saw the final dress rehearsal and then saw the last performance they did. And the difference was really night and day. And I kind of told them about it later, that when I saw the final dress, I was like, Stephen's got to do some more passes at this thing later. Like, this is not even close to done. And I was saying that as somebody who I think thinks about this stuff a lot, and was trying to separate out the performance from the text, from the direction. And then seeing it again just a few days later, it was so clear to me how much of that had actually just been carried in the way that it functioned on the stage as a kind of clockwork machine, or as an athletic team achieving something. Because that last performance, I was like, that was a damn good play. I was really happy with it.
That's so interesting, because I saw it later in the run. Like, I think I saw it maybe the second to last. Yeah, it blew me away. I was like riveted. How do you work that? Like, as a dramaturg in the room, if you're like, this moment, this scene, this play is missing something, how do you communicate that or get to like fixing that?
The dramaturg, one of the rules that I definitely push and don't always obey as well as I should is that you really do try to only go through the other creative team as in director and writer, and really mostly the person who has actually brought you onto that project. So acts, I was mostly talking to Stephen Bush. When we did Meg, I was mostly talking to Catalina and not Paula Vogel. So it's often about what's the tool that is not working. And something actually that I would say is something I see in a lot of note giving in any kind of field, because dramaturg is, you're essentially there to give notes. That's your job. Giving a note that is about the end goal. For example, sitting in a workshop and saying, I really wanted, I wanted you to add a monologue for that character at that point where they went into their feelings about that thing. That's like the very last version. That's like when you actually sit down and type, versus the note that is behind that note, which in that case would be something like, I wanted to know more about what that character was thinking, or I was interested in learning more about that character. And I think that's one of the big ways that I try to think about it, is that I'll see something maybe on stage and I'll say, okay, like, no, like this, like we can't do that like that. But really, it's also a factor of trusting the people you're working with and that they have something that they're going for, and then trying to kind of help them get to that rather than the thing that you would have made if you were in their place.
Yeah, and I think that is true in your dramaturgy, like having worked with you on a couple of projects. I mean, maybe else just because we vibe, but like, I really did feel like, oh, Michael has a thought and it makes sense and is appropriate and I can use it, which is not always true of people in a rehearsal space. If that is an example of a note that is like good, self-conscious and aware of what it's trying to accomplish, I feel like the most common kind of note, especially among newer or younger or less confident directors, is the note that shows how much the director knows. Not really about the performance, not really about the scene, not really about an immediate step we can take or something to try or something to do. It's just, well, I know about theater and I'll prove it to you, which, I think is also the kind of note that comes up in like a scene study class when you have other actors who are asked to give notes on the spot about like, well, what did you see?
I would say in terms of note giving or just the role of the dramaturg in general, this is something that I probably should not say as part of the role of the dramaturg. It's just something that I really value highly in rehearsal spaces is just levity and the ability to, I think that when you create a space that has levity to it and that has the trust that comes with some real experience of pleasure in the making of this thing, there is a lot more ease for performers, for writers, for directors to take a swing, try something out, take something out that they thought was really brilliant, say, oh man, oops, sorry about that.
Well, yeah, because then it's like, to go back to kind of like the sport or the game of it, it's like we're playing the game and it's about the game and it's not about like what I'm doing. It's about what we're doing and how the game is mediating between us and how we're playing with it, rather than something about myself, or like I've put a piece of myself here and if you don't like it, then it's you don't like me. It's like, no, we're just fucking around.
I'd also see this as, I wouldn't say that it's more important for tragic or serious work, but I've felt that it is particularly valuable in those pieces, and the experience of being able to sit back and say, we're doing Othello now, and then like go into this incredibly challenging, dark piece of work and feel the safety to actually work on it in a kind of generative and discovery kind of way.
Having fun, cracking a joke, having it be okay for it to be hard, and you can put that away and like have fun also, is really important just for like endurance. Because like if you're working on Othello, or like, I haven't done an Othello, somebody cast me as Iago, please. But like, a show like The Winter's Tale, which has these wild tone shifts, like you aren't going to be able to sustain working on the hard stuff if it's always painful. You need to be able to exhale and have fun. And also you need to be able to turn it around and find the levity, which you won't be able to do if you're always sad about how bad a time these characters are having.
This is also, I think, I'm going to advocate for like the opposite of method here, but like the value of staying outside of the character in some respects. Obviously, when performing, one needs to, really be inside of it in many ways, but also the ability to sit down with the play and look at the text and say, like, you know what, like this character is really acting kind of nuts right now, or wow, it's very it's confusing and unclear to me why this character makes this switch in this speech or something like that, and to kind of say, you know what, maybe that's something that we're going to need to fix, or there isn't maybe a genius lying behind that. And again, we're thinking about Shakespeare here. And, there's many times you look at his plays and it's like, oh, he actually wrote that because his buddy was able to do this one really funny joke. And so it's there and now we have to work with it. I think being able to say, like, maybe some of these things in this play are challenging for almost unserious reasons, and yet then we have to really take it seriously to solve it. Like, I think the serious task of having fun, I think, is what I would say.
But I mean, even on like a specific thing like that, where it's like there's a choice a character's making that's confusing to you, I think it's like really useful if you're flummoxed by a moment, just make an arbitrary choice, make a big physical gesture, make some sort of change, and then backfill from there. Like, does that do anything for you psychologically? If so, is that useful? If so, maybe just try playing with that, or like make an arbitrary choice. And if that feels really wrong, congratulations, that's maybe not the direction to go in,
I'm a big advocate for preparation, of course, in a million ways. But I also think that the rehearsal room is a really good place for not knowing and a really good place for trying. And something that I kind of actively try to do it when I dramaturg on a show is to say at some point early in the rehearsal process, I don't know, let me go find that out when someone asks me a question. Because one of the pressures that comes in when you have a dramaturg, and perhaps your vision of a dramaturg is somebody who's
has all the answers,
deep in research and stuff, is to be like, you know what, like I don't, but it's 2025. We've all got phones, we've all got laptops, and like we're in a room where we're trying things. And as the dramaturg, I'm also just trying things. And creating that safety to take that swing as a performer and try that line out when it doesn't really make sense yet, or any other kind of experimentation. That's why the room is there. We're not opening the first day that we come to the room.
I think it has a lot to do with, like, speaking as an actor, like just the absolute silliness of what being an actor means, of like auditions. Oh my God, I got a part. I have to show up and be the best I can ever possibly be, or else I'll never work again. Oh my God. Like, that creates, I think, a big need to impress and to be right and to be like, wow, Carl is so good. He knew all that stuff. That's awesome. I'm going to hire him again. To have resources to kind of short circuit that loop in the room is, I think, really important. And it's always stressful for me when I arrive in a room and there are not those things in place. And it's like, oh, it is a competition. We're competing about who can do art best. It's so stressful, it's so exhausting, and it's not fun. To bring it all the way back around to talking about like having fun in the space or being playful, I think where it gets tricky or dangerous or like risky in a not generative way, to use your framing, is when it's like you're making jokes at the expense of the work. I saw a production that was doing like one of these classic Shakespeare plays, and half of the choices on stage seemed to be making fun of the text that they were saying because they didn't want to actually deal with the problems of the text. So they were just like, blah, and I was sickened. And I was like, I'm so curious what that room was like, how this is where we ended up with this process.
Yeah, there's an interesting, I don't want to call it a trend, but like there's been a surge of productions recently. I don't think I'm referring to the production that you're talking about, but there's been a number of the kind of reimaginings that take place. One of them that I will name is the Showboat that took place at Skirball in January, where you kind of question why that material was compelling in the first place. And that definitely becomes a broader dramaturgical thing. And then when that isn't really clear when you're watching, when you're like, why were you drawn to this? Did you like this show before you decided to do it? A lot of other dominoes end up falling down. And it's very, very difficult to piece a show together around a choice. And I will say that I've certainly read plenty of plays in the past where I've said, I don't like this play, but it would be interesting to do. But
that's like, unless you have a vision for making it compelling for yourself, you're kind of setting yourself up for a bad time.
Yeah, or some deeper value in there. Another thing that I would say also about the kind of having fun is that I would definitely think that if any person is not having fun or relaxed in the room, then like nobody is, then that room is over. Because first of all, I say that in terms of intimacy and fight stuff, of course, like those kinds of prioritizations. And to me, those things coming into the room does not change your capacity to have fun and to have levity. It just makes it a better space to have that kind of experience.
I want to find something here. It's a quote that I have written in my notes that I'll find it and you'll be like, yes, I understand. This is a quote from Jaco van Dormel, who's a film director. I've never seen any of his movies. I don't know why I have this quote of his, but I think about it all the goddamn fucking time. If this film is everything we want it to be, maybe if we are very lucky, it will affect a few people for a little while in a way that is out of our control. The only thing that's certain is that the experience of making it will be with all of us. It will become part of us forever. So we must try our best to make it a good experience.
Yeah. Because the people who spend the time to create the work are spending way more hours with it, just on a flat time level. And the amount of study and work and learning that goes into it. This makes me think of research in general and the depths to which people will go to kind of learn about their characters and the time and the setting and things like that. And I think I've in the past been skeptical of it, and I still am in some cases. But I also think that it's the joy of that. Like that's a joyful thing to do, to like excitedly dive into this person from hundreds of years ago or whatever, or this location that you've never been to, and uncover everything that you can about it. And like, is it going to make it into the show? Like, I think many times it doesn't. Many times I'm not really noticing or thinking about, that, or what you learned about what they ate back then. It's not really doing a lot. But it's also because you loved it, and because that's like the riches of getting to meet and learn about and create this character or this world if you're a writer or a director. And I encourage it. I encourage every expression of love that there is for this medium.
Yeah,
only for this medium.
Only this medium. Yeah. If you're a musician, get out of here.
Get out of here.
Many thanks to Louie Zong for the use of his song Fragments off the Chopped Up Piano album for this podcast's music.
Shout out musicians.
Shout out musicians, for real. Where would we be without them? If music is the food of love, play on something that isn't Spotify. Spotify bad, folks.
Spotify bad.
Spotify bad. Do you use Spotify, Michael Landis?
No.
Good. Hey, oh my God.
I use. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it on the podcast. I'm not going to be recorded.
You're not on Tidal, are you?
No.
Okay.
It's better for the musicians, but people hate me when I say I use it.
Yeah, but people have bad taste. People use Spotify.
All right. I use YouTube Music.
Well, I don't think better for the musicians.
It is actually a
Really?
little bit. Yeah, it is. It is. It's weirdly one of the better ones for musicians.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy for you.
Thanks.
I use Apple Music.
Smart.
Is it?
I don't know.
I don't know. So, I mean, we've talked about process and projects, but we haven't really talked about your writing very much, and I think we should, because, I mean, I've read some of your work, and I've seen some of your work, and I've taken pictures for some of your work, and I've been in a fair amount of your work, and you do treat as one of your subjects making things. Why?
Yeah, it's a big part of what I do. I think I realized recently that there's like 3 or 4 pieces where it's like about a character who has this kind of obsessive relationship to some form of art making, and the conflict is essentially them struggling against it. It comes up like a bunch, and it was not an intentional trend. But it is essentially a case of write what you know, and I identify really closely with the experiences of those characters, and it connects. It connects for me as that being one of the core experiences for me that I struggle with, is the experience of working on these things, not knowing what form of success they may take. Even some form of success will not really give it value. It will just mean that it has found some success. Yeah, I think I think I learned at some point, maybe it was at some like poetry class, that like the thing that you want to be thinking when you're working on a piece, you want to be thinking about a question to which you do not know the answer. You don't want to, and I think many people have seen many shows in which the writer very clearly knew the answer to the question they were asking, and you wind up with something that's in a kind of didactic place or simply uninteresting. And so that's kind of the question that I'm like, I don't know the answer to this, is how do I reckon with making these things that I have this compulsion to make and to work on, but I also question the significance of and the importance of. That question is one that I don't have an answer to, and so it's one that I come back to a lot, I think.
Well, so in the play that we just did the reading for on Monday, Life is Bad, about a character, Jay. Does Jay have a name?
Don't tell me. And I almost don't want to have his name be Jay either.
Yeah, just guy, man,
an individual. Yeah,
yeah. He's having a bad time in a lot of ways. And this is like juxtaposed in the text with appearances from other characters who are variably ascendant or descendant in their own sort of journeys. And there's these two guys, I guess they're not gendered, but I do think of them as men, Capitalist 1 and Capitalist 2, who are ascendant throughout. Whenever they appear, they are in a better and better position, even as our main character is in a worse and worse position. And like the play concludes with our main character trying to kill one of these guys who is like giving some valedictory speech about how wonderful everything in his life is. And our main character has just had his organs harvested by a multi-level marketing scheme victim after his dog exploded. And then also his wife left him, and also his parents disowned him, and also he got fired, and various other indignities. And our man tries to shoot him and fails, and shoots himself, by accident. And then the play ends. But these two capitalists who are in VC or tech or something, and they're thriving and they're happy, that feels really true.
I'm happy to talk about that play. I'm really excited about it. And just because for me, reading it and hearing it makes me kind of happy, because I enjoy it in a way that feels like I've written to my own taste more than I have in the past. So this I think I had the idea for this maybe 2020 or something, where I just got really excited about Book of Job, and I've been on a real adaptation kick for a very long time, where I've just been adapting stuff. And I was really excited about Book of Job. I've read it. If you haven't read it, it is funny. It is actually funny to read today. I found it enjoyable to read in a way that really surprised me. And yeah, essentially it was just any point that my life was at, like a point where I felt I was at the absolute bottom, I would think of this and it would make me laugh, because it's very funny when everything goes wrong. It's a very funny thing. So, I revisited it recently, worked on it as not a direct adaptation, because I like to move away from that for myself, just to sort of expand what I'm writing. And yeah, I think so many moments in that play come from like sitting in public somewhere and just hearing someone talk and be like, fuck you, man. Like someone just having a great time, or with like, their like beautiful significant other and wonderful family. And, and I'm just like, I don't like you, I don't think you should be that happy. And it's this like horrible, dark feeling that like, I think shouldn't be talked about really, but I put a lot of things that I think don't get talked about, but that I thought were funny and that I wanted to talk about in that play too.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think it's very funny.
thank you.
I really enjoyed it. I didn't give you my feedback after the reading on Monday, but I think from the two drafts, from the Friday draft to the Monday draft, like how you cut a fair amount of the scenes down. I think one of the things that was so delicious about the draft that I read on the Friday was like a lot of these scenes are too long because the point of each scene is just for the knife to get twisted further and further and then twist even more. And you made the choice for the Monday version to reduce the intensity of each twist to allow for each of the individual steps on the way down, to mix metaphors. And I do wonder if some of the delight in just how painful each of one of those massive twists of the knife was lost by not getting to sit with them as much. So that's my note for you, is less scenes, but make them worse.
I love that. I think that is really interesting. I actually, in writing it, did not think of the length and like torment of the twist as the reason for the length. The reason for the length was frequently a desire to make the precision of his pain as specific as possible. So I'll refer to the first scene in which Carl played the boss of Jay, who was letting him go. And it was important to me to kind of add as many terrible things that a boss could say to you when they're letting him go as possible, expanding on it. I would go about my day, and then like I would hear from a friend or see something on social media about something else horrible that happened, and I was like, oh, that's like terrible, that has to go in. And so it would grow and grow for that in that way.
Not only were you not good at your job, but also the people who you thought liked you didn't, and also you smell kind of bad, and also just the piling on of it was so funny. And then to end the scene with like, and you look bad. You just look bad.
Yeah. It was also important for me to vary the intensity of the terrible things happening. So, his dog explodes, which is insane. And that is a very bad thing to have happen. And his wife says, you never pleasured me sexually, and it wasn't because of anything to do with you physically. It's because you just aren't good at it. And you couldn't ever learn.
Yeah, I couldn't be bothered to teach you. It wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, and then like later, all his socks have holes in them, which is like not just in my own experiences of like having sequences of terrible things happening. You hit that point where your shoelace breaks, and you're like, this is horrible. Like, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. This is so much worse than all that other stuff. For some reason, this thing is the real thing that breaks the camel's back. And I wanted to play with that feeling and the degrees of terrible things happening and how an outsider sees them as one way, but then when you're living them, you feel something very, very different in terms of the torture.
Yeah. And then like just having these characters who are kind of in different spaces that maybe our main guy has tried and failed in, and then moving into like new spaces where they're doing even worse. Like, I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of fun stuff.
I'll say something I was nervous about in that play is that it's written very, I'm going to use the word like naively, in that the structure of the play is literally just guys on stage the whole time, and people come and like just give him crap and then they go. And I think it kind of reads like someone who never wrote or read a play before, honestly. But I was actually thinking of like expressionists and Wojciech specifically, which is not, I guess I don't think it is, but the expressionists being Harry Ape and O'Neill and stuff, that had that structure where it's kind of just like some guy and just a bunch of stuff happens, and the kind of rawness and just like torment of that, and that I think that's why Wojciech is funny and why people still do it. That was something that I was into for that. I think I'm just like dropping references to validate this really stupid play that I wrote, but like there's a show from Germany called Berlin Alexanderplatz, that has a scene where this guy who's he's kind of a loser, kind of a schmuck, starts selling newspapers, and then like later in the episode you realize that it's boy actor Volkish. I forget the full name of it, but yeah, it's the Nazi
rag. Yeah.
And so it's a much more kind of like tragic and emotional kind of beat because of the way that he's been set up and the way that he then takes that on. But yeah. I think it was just so funny.
Well, first of all, I don't think any of the metatextuality is like transparent in Life is Bad. Like I wasn't reading it being like, oh, this is a reference to other stuff, you know? So I think it has integrity on its own. But one of the things that is like, I think keeps it from being like incel coded resentment sesh is this guy doesn't want to hand out Nazi rags. Like when he gets kind of tricked into being a man on the street handing out stuff, and it turns out that it's like join the Nazi party leaflets, and he's like, well, this is bad. Like, this is a man who is, you know, having a bad time, and his life is literally the worst it could possibly be, he thinks. And he's still like, but fuck those fucking Nazis, man, which is nice.
And there's like, I think one of the big parts of it is sort of the no ethical consumption feeling, I think, and the like total nihilistic feeling that comes from that experience of like everything in our current world is like tainted. In that, you know, in the following scene, he goes and gets money for doing medical experiments, and it turns out they're selling that data to the Nazis too. So, you know, it's the constant entrapment of the world.
I mean, coming from journalism, specifically the feeling of like the futility of, especially right now, this kind of work where it's like you put in the work, you get the thing out, and then the Washington Post puts a fucking wrong AI summary at the beginning of it. Truly, truly the futility and nihilism of meaningful effort.
I think something I'm really interested in is actually thinking about and dealing with like evil. And something I've taken a lot of inspiration from for that is post-war German stuff in general, because there's so many writers from that part of the world who are just like, I think we got to think about this really long and hard. And I've been really inspired by reading some of their stuff, because I think there's a real similarity when you are thinking about the US and you're thinking about how our empire works and how it's, you know, what it's done. There's something similar where I feel the need to kind of have that like reckoning type of experience with it, at least for me, just personally. And I think hopefully some other people would like to do that too. And that ends up coming through in a lot of things. And so I'm just also noticing that a lot of the stuff I've mentioned for Life is Bad is German as well. And I think some of what you're saying about the way that this character kind of tries to escape and just keeps getting closed and closed and closed, and then ends up at the end, the only thing he can try to do is to murder someone who we don't even know if there's anything wrong with him. Like he claims that everything is fine with the capitalist one, has a very long speech at the end about
I love my job, I'm doing meaningful things for society, it's great, I feel good.
Yeah, it's specifically that you might think that because I'm super successful, there's something like messed up in the background. And I want to tell you that there isn't, and that I am actually just really, really happy that I'm so successful. And we don't really, you know, these are all things that might change in the future. We don't really know if, you know, revenge on this character is like even fair, because he might actually be like a decent guy.
Yeah.
So
in any case, though, free Luigi.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Actually, we had a reading of this that was just a section of it at the Tank that was followed by a performer whose name I won't be able to remember, doing an incredible rendition of a Free Luigi song.
Yeah. Well,
genius.
I read in that.
Oh, my God.
And I corpsed, if you recall, on The Dog Popped.
But I'm so proud of any time that a performer has to laugh at something I wrote on. It's so validating. It's so much more validating than an audience member, because you're not supposed to be laughing.
Yeah. Well, so just I have my little phone out here because I do want to shout out this artist who had the song, because it was so wonderful.
I meant to reach out and be like, is there like is there a link or something that I can use to share with people? It's really, really great.
Well, so the musician did a musical that was also at the Tank that I missed on its first run, and then also missed when it had like another additional weekend that a friend of ours, Amelia McGinnis, was the stage manager for, called Gollum, kind of like a branding free version of Gollum, like
The Jew thing?
the Jew thing.
No, that's the Jew thing.
The Golem. No, I think it's Gollum. Like,
I think it's the Jew thing.
I think it's Gollum.
Jew thing.
You know, the Jew thing.
The Jew thing.
You know, the Jew thing. Is it Golem? Really?
Yeah, I think it is.
Well, fuck me, I guess. Anyway,
okay.
About a golem or Gollum, TBD. Anyway, Garrett and Ethan are the artists, Garrett Polonian and Ethan Crystal. And I don't know which one sang the song, but the song was great.
But I guess what I would say is that I have felt a lot of frustration seeing. I love an enormous amount of work that happens in the city. I love an enormous amount of work off Broadway and on Broadway and off and all these things. Like I do not discriminate in that sense at all. I think that the methods of production for work at a certain level and higher in the city kind of filters out some of the just anger and like disgust and emotions that, you know, for a place that has certain kinds of reputations to uphold and certain kinds of audiences to think about, would not want to be programming. And if I was there, I wouldn't program it either. But that's the kind of stuff where I am like, I really want to think about it. I really want to see how to make it. I really want to continue to try to make it. And that's kind of what I did with Life is Bad. It's probably one of the first plays that I wrote that I did not have some thought about where this would live or who might have any interest in doing this. It was really a sequence of things that I thought, kind of made me laugh that I heard about or whatever. And it was very satisfying. And I was really glad that you read in it, Carl. I was really glad that people got to hear it. And, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And any producers out there want to put forward, I don't know, what do you say? Cool 50K. I think we could do a lot with that. 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 115, 120, 200, $500,000 sold to the man with the pharmaceutical company.
Baby, we're booking the Belasco.
Oh my God.
Robert Wilson had a Broadway show in 1975. And I think that this show is probably funnier than anything Robert Wilson has ever done.
Maybe.
So,
have you seen any Robert Wilson high?
I have not done that.
Well,
no.
I have not seen any Robert Wilson because I don't like opera. But actually, speaking of opera, because the Met, because the Lincoln Center, because the New York City Ballet, Justin Peck is an artist who I think is operating at like the highest level, who has like a singular voice and identity and blows me away. Did you see Illinois?
I did see Illinois.
On Broadway or at the Armory?
Armory.
Me too. Yeah, we're hipsters. The tap dancing song, that was like one of the most exciting things I've ever seen on a stage. You strongly disagree.
I don't strongly disagree. I did enjoy Illinois. I liked it. I thought it was good. I will say, however, that I felt what happened with Illinois on the producerial side made me suspicious because it went from Bard to Armory and then very quickly to Broadway. And what that kind of indicated to me was both a real hunger to get to New York City and specifically to get to Broadway however they could. And I did not see that as kind of, I would also say that like when I thought of and when I heard about the creative team that they compiled for Illinois, I imagined something that was much less sellable, essentially. And when Armory kind of marketed it, they sort of presented it as much more towards dance theater rather than, something similar to productions that we've seen on Broadway previously.
Well, you might want to see Mystic Familiar if you can.
I've seen some of his other stuff in ballet for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Mystic Familiar. He's a very talented choreographer. He does he does great stuff. It's obvious that he has he's already had an incredible career and he's not very old. So he's going to continue to have an incredible career. So yeah, but Illinois is an interesting example of a show that has a few clear artistic voices behind it and a real interest in doing something that was very distinct from what we were seeing in a lot of other spaces.
Yeah, but I think for me, what this is sort of leading to is this feeling I have about like the struggles that you're saying about like how do you bring something that expresses disgust, something that's like hard to see or hard to watch or hard to sit with to a stage in New York at a high level. And like dance does seem like one option because it is both simpler and much more complicated. Like as a performance medium, like whenever I see a bad musical, I'm often just like, well, the dancing was great, you know, in a way that like I can't really honestly say about the performances a lot of the time, the way you're supposed to say like, oh, well, the performances were great. Where it's like, I mean, if the text is bad, the performances are probably going to be bad, but you can't dance ironically. If you're dancing, you're moving, you're expressing, you can't pretend to dance the way you can pretend to act. And like Nora and I go to the ballet when we can, when they have like, you know, the cheapo Tix situation. And like, I'm always struck by just how pure the expression is, which is maybe my naivety about dance because it's not a form that I practice. So I'm not fluent in like, you know, maybe the subtleties of it where it's like, well, that's bad and that's dumb. It's like, I don't know, man, they're just beautiful and moving beautifully, or beautiful and moving aggressively and disturbingly. And I'm upset, but it's like the feeling is pure. In a way that there's something about the complication of a theater production that like when it's brought to stage at such a big scale, maybe it's all the competing voices, maybe it's all the competing demands of money, of performance, of art, of whatever. But I think it is true what you're saying is that there's this filter of the hardest things don't get done.
Yeah, I think, you know, something that we even talked about this in school was that theater as a field is downstream of the other fields, that things that, you know, become interesting and compelling in film or in music or in television, you know, they appear in theater 10, 20 years later. One thing I would point out that is like that is well, a great example is obviously the appearance of hip hop on Broadway stage, which took, I think, 20 plus years, 30 years, something like that.
Spike Lee was already a professor emeritus.
Yeah, this is very, very, you know, took a very long time. Another one would be the recent burst of horror plays, which none of them have really clicked for me. I know some people have really enjoyed some of them, and that's great. But the attempt to kind of do horror on stage in this new way is like, you know, very much downstream of a lot of the things that have been happening in films. So anyway, that's one thing. And, you know, another part of that is the ability to kind of hold certain types of abstraction and to understand certain types of use of the theatrical space for most audiences. And so you can look at, this is why I've always been absolutely obsessed with the New York downtown. And you look at something that Foreman did, you look at something that
because the audiences are sensitive and trained in how the form works. They know how to watch a play if they've been taught and learned how to watch a play.
Right. And when I look at those things and when I talk to people about them, because that's a lot of my interest is downtown stuff and then also international stuff that also works differently.
Well, from cultures that have like meaningful theater culture because they support the arts.
Yeah, places that pay for it. It tends to be, to me, a case of like actually unlearning how to watch it rather than learning how to watch it. Because when you go to a like Foreman play and there's like a bunch of strings there, there's strings. Like they're not like, there isn't like something that you need to be gathering from that informationally to then understand the rest of the play. And when you look at the play, there's not a lot that you really need to grasp beyond the fact that words are being said, events are happening, and you're kind of picking up on what you can pick up on. It's looking at an abstract painting as opposed to looking at the Mona Lisa. And I think that one of the things that can hamper people from seeing stuff like that, or seeing like Worcester Group is another example of plays that create a lot of material on stage without necessarily a lot of meaning behind all of it, is the expectation that I need to understand this. I need to understand what all these things mean.
Was it King of Rats? Was that the one that was recently? It's a Foreman play.
Symphony of Rats.
Symphony of Rats. I saw the Worcester Group Symphony of Rats.
Great. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. And what was so thrilling about it for me was such virtuosic performance in the service of such fucking nonsense. I was bewildered and overwhelmed and confused And I could not square all of the things happening. It was just madness. And it was so satisfying to be like, actually, we're not going to let you play your little theoretical games, Carl. You're just here with us. We're in the space. What's about is what's happening. Congratulations. Go nuts.
Another comparison I would make is, I wouldn't even say prose. I would say like very somewhat traditional prose, maybe like, pre-modernism prose, versus, reading poetry, where an image will appear, a reference will appear, and it may not be the thing that you get on your first read, or you may have to pass over it or something like that. And yet it also brings another flavor or color to it. Maybe you don't understand a reference, but you see the word and it makes you think of something else in your life. And that's how you get connection. And then you feel something about it. That kind of thing I love. And it's something that outside of that, downtown scene, outside of other regional scenes out there. I mean, Chicago had some brilliant stuff, Seattle and San Francisco. There's a lot of places that try to do stuff like this, but it has not really hit that level of, widespread acceptance.
Well, I don't think it can. I think if you need to fill a house of like 900 seats or however many fit in like fucking, I don't know, the August Wilson Theater, like, what is that, 600? I don't know. But like, and it's people coming in from like Iowa or whatever, people whose primary interaction with performance media is movies and who are going to try to be watching a movie on stage. And that's kind of what they need. Like, you cannot do that sort of stuff, which I think is one of the benefits of the small audience size of downtown theater is like, it finds an audience because it's small. Yeah. And like, I think of like cult films in that same way because the form is there and the piece gets to exist for as long as it's archived. It has the time to accumulate an audience, and it can find scale in that way, in a way that like a theater production of a certain size simply cannot, because of cost. It has to recoup. And so it has to be accessible. And so it has to be easy.
I have a few reactions to that. I agree in some broad strokes and disagree in some little things, but...
And I'm not saying this is good.
Sure. But one thing I'll share is that, so, I mean, I literally just like last week or so, like started doing student engagement as my day job. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer that like you get people in that pocket up in probably like 14 to like 22, maybe 25, and you show them something weird. And I've done it a million times. I've had so many strange Tinder dates when I was in undergrad where I was like, hey, like I just have tickets to this like 24-hour thing at Skirball. Let's go. And that's not, I didn't actually take anybody to that, but like going to something very strange with someone and just sitting there and saying like, well, I don't know, what do you think? I had a really high success rate. There's a lot of people where...
Of kisses or of turning people on to art?
Of people being excited about it. Yeah, not kisses. That still never happened.
Wow.
People who are kind of willing to look at... I think the reason I mentioned the age range is because I think that's the pocket where people are willing to kind of look at something new and like sit with it for maybe just a second longer and think about it a little bit. And say to themselves, well, it was a really strange thing that person did in that Worcester Group show or whatever. But like, I thought it was kind of cool or really impressive or something like that. And honestly, those are not that far from my own reflections when I see those shows. So which is part of what I mean with unlearning to see it, is because I think once you move past that, people end up saying to themselves, well, I know what a play is. And now when I go, I need to see it this way. But another thing that I'll say is that I had a real obsession with production of plays and expenses in productions of plays. And that was what I did my thesis on at Columbia. And so I completely agree with you that the financial structure of it really doesn't make sense. And that's a major, major stop to it. I would also say that it's very hard to make the finances of making theater on any level really make sense. And part of why when you look at the history of it, it's usually maintained as a kind of propagandistic support for some kind of imperial regime.
Yeah. Or one thinks of our good friend William Shakespeare.
Exactly. Or you think of, street buskers and, clowns and things like that.
One thinks of our good friend William Shakespeare.
Absolutely. And that's a real tangled knot to untie, another knot reference, when we see this point in history where theater is not really that valued at a higher level. It's becoming less valued at a higher level. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm not like boohoo theater, but like it's a thing that's happening.
It is not a highly relevant force in culture.
No, and it's also not really being maintained as a kind of pet project of the wealthy in the way that it used to be, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean,
fading out
big
as well.
cuts that the Ford Foundation made like last month.
The cuts, I think you also see that the philanthropic habits. This is all from my day job, but the philanthropic habits of the new wealthy and the interest in maintaining the kind of cultural connection to the past that really helped fund a lot of operas and symphonies and nonprofit theaters is not really the case anymore.
Yeah.
So
I hear in every rehearsal, actually, you have to keep a seat open for Bloomberg.
I think that is truer than you might think at some places. So this is, these are interesting background thoughts. And I wonder if it actually might mean that it's a more forgiving environment to create really strange things because there is going to be a more stripped back DIY experience. And we're going to need to find our own pockets a bit more efficiently. And so...
Yeah, well, hopefully also Broadway kind of gets off at like the $20 million show horse and returns to like, closer to 5-ish as the standard, which it was for so long. And like, I mean, the two big Tony winners last year each cost $5 million instead of $20 million.
Yeah.
Stereophonic and Merrily.
Merrily.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that about Merrily. That's great.
Merrily was, I think, $6 million.
Yeah. So, it's also an incredibly dark thing to discuss an entire field of performance and have it hinge on about 50 theaters in like, I think I'm pretty sure less than a square mile.
But
it's
it
actually
doesn't.
definitely less than a square mile.
We are kind of coming up on time, so maybe we can table this for a conversation for later, because what I think the metonym of Broadway for theater writ large is really dangerous. And I think where the actual real damage of the last 5 years from like COVID to now is not actually on Broadway, because those audiences are recovering and, they're big companies. They've got money. They can weather the storm. It's the ecosystem that supports it. It's the forest floor around these big trees that has been salted. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard as a young artist to try to find purchase there.
I'll say that, like, I think for a while in undergrad, I had a professor who was really into like materialism and historical materialism and using that to study theater. And I was really excited about that. I still am. But I kind of got really nerdy about it for a while, not in the weeds with the numbers, but more just the general, how does one go about making work in this field and so on. And what I've come to now, and this is why this is related to the Life is Bad play, and it's related to the themes of my other plays about these obsessive artists, is that you kind of just have to do the work somehow. And if there are these kinds of, grand things happening all around us and people spending money in different ways around us, but ultimately, like, what I want to do is make the work that I want to make in some fun places and share it with people. And that's kind of it.
And that's kind of all it's ever been also. And also just on the historical analysis of it, there's a big survivorship bias thing happening where like the theater artists that we know, the pillars of the past, were the ones that made it. God knows how many hundreds and thousands of playwrights were in Arthur Miller's cohort, and we have Arthur Miller. And I mean, even like, it was never easy. It's always been hard.
Yeah.
And it's always been brutal.
Yeah, very true.
Until the revolution. We'll fix it. We are pretty much at time. So I want to just sort of throw the last question to you that I always do, which is, was there anything that you would have wanted me to ask or that you really wanted to say that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
When you brought up the Met, when you brought up like Justin Peck, I thought you were going to go to like opera, to like my opera career.
And they're actually about to shoot us, so...
That's a real thing.
Wait, you have an opera career?
I was in the children's chorus at the Met.
You were in the...
I was in the children's chorus at New York City Opera and the Met.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I performed at both places.
Excuse I?
Yeah.
Me excused?
Which is very funny because I also did a show recently called Phantom of the Opera's Friend that has a lot to do with opera as well, and it still keeps like floating around me.
Do you still have the pipes?
Not even a little bit. So one thing about it was that we trained in operatic style. We didn't train in kind of a regular style, and so anytime I tried to sing anything else, it sounded terrible. And then also your voice changes, and you when you're a kid in the field, you have to have that high voice. So, but yeah, I did. You can still see me. You want to check out that Carmen DVD or video from 2011 with Alina Garancia. Bingo bango, you'll see me in a little boy vest. I'm really tall already too, which is kind of funny.
Do you get residuals?
No.
Fuck.
Oh, I wish.
Well, that can also be something we talk about in episode 2, whenever that is. Maybe next year when we're both on Broadway.
Sounds good to me.
When they take Life is Bad to Broadway and you still have me playing 7 parts.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Where can people find your work? Where can people find you?
So website is michaellandesperformance.com. My last name is spelled Landes. My Instagram is m.landes.nyc, I think. Let's hope that is correct and I get all that good interaction.
Cool. Well, thank you, Michael, for joining me, Carl Bindman, for this episode of Art Workers, the Independent Artists Forum. Thanks again for tuning in, and thank you to Michael Landis. This is Art Workers with Carl Bindman. That's me. For questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach me at carlbindman.com. And thank you again to Louie Zong for the use of our theme song, Fragments.